Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea Sato. I work here at the library on adult programs, and we're glad to welcome you here tonight. And we're pleased to once again partner with the Wilton Youth Council on another important program for parents. Before I turn the program over to the Wilton Youth Council, I have to take this opportunity to mention a few upcoming programs here at the library, because that's my job. On Sunday, in honor of Women's History Month, we have a performer named Ginger Grace, and she will portray the First Ladies Coalition, about 4 First Ladies, Eleanor Roosevelt, Jackie Kennedy, Lady Bird Johnson, and Mary Todd Lincoln, from the eyes of a seamstress who connects them all. So it's like a play. Monday night, Greg Blank, our film historian, is here to talk about the career and films of Meryl Streep. And Tuesday, the Wilton Youth Council is back with a presentation on how to raise a well-adjusted child. So please come back for some of these. So now, please welcome Jen Kepner of the Wilton Youth Council. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jen Kepner, and I'm chair of parent programs for the Wilton Youth Council, and we are so excited to bring tonight's program to you. And as the parent of a junior, I am especially excited to be a participant in tonight's presentation. I'd like to thank our co-sponsors, the Wilton Library and the High School PTSA, and thanks to Andrea and Eduardo and everybody at the library for their help. And thanks also to our presenters tonight. I'm going to introduce them and then turn the program over to you. They'll talk, and then we'll have time for questions and answers. And I just want to say the library closes at 8. So we're going to respect your time and the library's time and try to wrap up by 8 o'clock. Susan Bauerfeld is a licensed clinical psychologist, a level 3 internal family systems therapist, a speaker, workshop leader, parent coach, wife of 40 plus years, mother to 4 wonderful young adult sons. She has recently retired from her practice in Norwalk, Connecticut, and has shifted her professional focus to presentations and workshops about parenting and managing anxiety and trauma at national and international conferences and in her local community. She strives to help people get their shift together by offering both hope and tools for transformation that bring more compassion, calmness, curiosity, and connectedness to their relationships with themselves and with others. When she is not working, she loves to travel, read, knit, go to the theater, and spend time with her husband, family, and dog. And Deena is a partner with the Bertram Group and uses her background both as a lawyer and an M.S.W. to support students and their families throughout the entire admissions process, planning both undergraduate and graduate educations. She graduated magna cum laude from Mount Holyoke College and received her law degree and master's degree in social work from the University of Connecticut. She has served as counsel in the U.S. Congress, where she focused on education issues, and in the private sector for national public interest organizations such as the Children's Defense Fund. Prior to becoming an education consultant, Deena was Associate Director of Admissions at Columbia University Business School, where she reviewed hundreds of applications and gained keen insights into what makes a candidate stand out. So we are so thrilled that both of them are here to share their expertise with us. And last, our disclaimer, the Youth Council's disclaimer is this is for information only and is not meant to be specific medical advice. After that, I'm going to turn it over to Deena and Susan. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be speaking to people because I just did a webinar and they're always so weird. And I was apparently speaking to like 1,600 people, but I was just looking at my computer screen. So I'm delighted to have some real faces here. So let's see. Is this on? All right, I'll use the cursor. It was on before. Okay, so there's a culturally defined recipe for success that I suspect a lot of you are here to fulfill, okay, or to help you can hope your children fulfill. And that's we have this idea that achievement is necessary to survive, and achieving admission to a really selective college is going to guarantee survival. So this is the soup we're living in. And when we're living in that soup, you know, I have this little, I wish this was where, here we go. This is you as the base camp for your kids, okay, this little symbol. And when you're the base camp and you're living with this belief, then it becomes this idea that you need to know what this path is, take this path, and get your child up there to the top. Okay? Does this feel right to a lot of people? Yeah, no, am I making things up? This is our cultural soup, okay? So there's a lot of pressure on you because the culture says, oh, it's your job. You got to make sure they achieve, right? And the kids are absorbing this too. Even if you're a parent who's saying, it doesn't matter, we're going to find a good fit, you can take a gap here. Even if you're doing that, the kids are absorbing this in school and from the culture. Hey, but here's the problem. Stuff happens, okay? And this stuff, situations that include uncomfortable feelings and facts, this stuff gets in the way of achieving those goals, right? You know, it's expensive. You might not have enough money, okay? Your kid might go, I don't know, okay? They might be like, or not even interested, okay? There might be all kinds of questions, okay? So all this stuff gets in the way. And that stuff can be interpreted, given this cultural message. We've got this cultural message. You got to do this to survive. Then the stuff becomes a survival threat. So what's a parent to do? Worry. Okay, how many of you are worriers? Okay. Yeah? Okay. Yeah. Okay, we come by this honestly. We start the whole what if. What if they don't get in? What if they, you know, what if they're only average? What if? Okay? And when we start worrying, one of the common generated thoughts is, oh no, all this stuff is a threat to success. So what does worry want to do? Worry wants to get rid of it. Got to get rid of all that stuff. How many of you have worked so hard to get rid of all these blocks on the path? Okay, and I did it too. Okay, so I'm confident a lot of you have worked really hard to get rid of the blocks. Another common thought is a mistake, a hiccup, a detour, any kind of divergence, neurodivergence, any other kind of divergence. That's going to throw them off the path. Okay, so a common worry solution to that is let's make sure. Go, 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 achieve, 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 achieve. Okay? So if you want to learn a little more about achievement culture and the burdens, I'm not going to get into that too much here, but read Jennifer Wallace's book, Never Enough. And it's very kind and compassionate with how we got here as parents, but it helps you understand this burden a little more and the impact it's having on your kids. And I just want to do a real quick exercise, okay? Just to plant a little seed. I was just at my level 3 training for internal family systems, and we talked about cultural burdens. And one of the questions to ask is, okay, so there's this belief. So think about your version of this belief of what achievement means and what this achievement of getting into college means. So just take a little minute and think, what is that belief that you hold about that? Like, if they don't do that, it's going to be a disaster, or it's just super important, or we value this in our family, whatever it is. Don't judge it, just see what it is. And then get a little curious, like, where did that come from? Where did that come from? Does that belong to your experience and your child's experience, or did it come from somewhere else? It's just a really interesting thought experiment. Okay, so the upside of this approach I've just been talking about is kids are achieving amazing things, right? Okay, Deena, you probably see these resumes that are incredible. They're just doing incredible things, okay? They are rising to the challenge we are putting before them. The downside is it really depletes resources. Depletes your resources, it depletes their resources, both the material and the non-material. A little more about that in a minute. And this has a really adverse impact on health and well-being, both now and in the future. Okay, so this is just a graphic. I like my little people here, okay. So the impact of these worry-driven approaches to the college process are that the kids are striving. They're rising to the challenge, okay, most of them, not all of them. Surviving, okay, and definitely not thriving. Okay, the rates of anxiety and depression attest to that. So let's look at what actual survival needs are. Okay, I hate to break it to you, but getting into a selective college is not necessary for survival. Okay? Even though it does make life easier, there's no question about that. It can open doors. It can do all those things that you want it to do. But you can survive without it. You do not need it to survive. What you need to survive is taking care of your body. Okay? You need to develop some coping skills so you can manage. And this is what your kids need, and connectedness and mattering. Okay, mattering and connectedness are critically important. People live longer when they're connected and they feel like they matter. Okay, they're healthier. Their physical health is better. But let's look at what happens with all these worry-based approaches. Okay? How many of your kids are exhausted like this? Okay. If they're not, and you're not there yet, you know, a lot of them get exhausted, and some of them do it to themselves. It's not that you're putting that pressure on. They're absorbing it from the culture. The overwhelm of all the things to do can be huge. And then when they're feeling like what matters more is their grades and their achievements than they do, then they shut down, okay, or get depressed or anxious. So I know I'm giving kind of a downer. We'll get to the happy stuff in a minute. Okay, there is really good news here. Okay, but you know, achievement culture and worrying really block your most valuable resource for your children, and that's connectedness. And so the rest of what I'm going to talk about is the importance of connectedness and how to keep that going while you're going through this process. I'm not saying abandon the process. You're not going to do that, okay? And nobody wants you to do that. That's not the point. The point is keeping your relationship strong and keeping that front and center, that your kids matter to you. Of course they do, but when you're so focused worrying about the achievements, they get the message that that matters more. Right, so this is from research from Harvard, the Harvard Happiness Study. It's a very long-term study where they've been following, I think, are they mostly men, you know? I don't know. But they've been following this cohort of people since they were teenagers, and they're now like 80 years old, okay? And they've been looking at their health, they've been looking at their jobs, they've been looking at all kinds of data. And they're really trying to answer the question, what makes people happy? Okay? What contributes to happiness? And so, you know, I like to think about this as we do need resources in order to survive, strive, and thrive. And that's what you want to provide for your kids, right? You want to provide resources that help them strive, do the best they can, that help them survive, you know, stay alive, and that ultimately help them thrive and be happy. I don't love the word happy, but this study uses that word, happiness. Okay, so there are two types of resources that we need. Achievement culture focuses on this first one mostly, these material resources. Okay, and most of them are, you know, it's a lot tied to money. So schooling, books, computers, clothing, really important. We really need these. But then what these communicate is we're investing in you. So kids, when they see that they have resources, they go, oh, mom and dad are invested in in making life good for me. That's a really good thing, and it's really important. But we also have these non-material resources. And this comes from Dick Schwartz's work in internal family system. He calls this self-energy, and it has all these C qualities. Okay? Connectedness, creativity, okay? Calmness, curiosity, confidence. Okay? He loves alliteration, so there are also some P qualities, but we're just going to talk about the C's today. So these non-material resources are super important to your kids. And they communicate you matter. So when you're coming to a kid with curiosity, with compassion, with calmness, okay, it's much easier to have a conversation. It's much easier for them to learn. We're going to look at what happens in the brain, okay? It just creates an environment that's better for them. You need both. But when they looked at the study, like what contributes, is it money or is it other things? So money, definitely, until you have your basic needs met, money's super important, okay? And those material needs are super important. If we don't have a house, if we don't have clothes, if we can't eat, we're not doing so well. And we're not feeling happy, we're not feeling good. But once those basic needs are met, the incremental benefit of more money is negligible. Okay? It doesn't rise. But when we look at connectedness, it's the gift that keeps on giving. I don't have my glasses, so I'm going to have to paraphrase what he says about this, but it's, here we go, if I get far enough away. Among the many predictors of health and happiness, from good diet to exercise to level of income, a life of good relationships stands out for its power and consistency. It's the gift that keeps on giving. So connectedness sets your kids up for lifelong happiness in ways that achievement and money do not. So your relationship is super important. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Okay? And I'm not trying to put pressure on you, and I'm not trying to guilt you. So if you're all worriers in the room, which I'm confident probably most of you are, just take a breath. Everyone's welcome. Anxious parts are welcome. Okay? Be kind to yourself. But providing this relationship is the most important thing for your children. None of us survive without connectedness. This burgeoning incidence of loneliness, because we're not so connected. We're not in these, extended family groups anymore. We're on our phones a lot. We're not connecting the way we once did. And people are feeling lonelier, even when they're like chatting online all day. And connectedness really increases the power of your influence. How many of you would like to have more influence with your teens? Okay. I bet. Yeah. Okay. You have no control. I hate to tell you. Okay. But what you have is influence. And the more connectedness there is, the more beneficial the power of your influence. So what we're going to talk now is getting your shift together during this process and how to do that. And how to focus less on worry about the achievements and the outcomes and more on the connectedness, the coping, and the mattering. And trust me, they will strive more successfully when they have this. Okay? When they don't have this is when they start flagging and lagging. Okay, so the beneficial base camp is rich in those C qualities, Dick Schwartz's C qualities, the connectedness, the calmness, the curiosity, all of that, and all of those things that say you matter. And in a beneficial base camp, I love Mount Everest, so this base camp idea came from Mount Everest, because I was thinking about how often achieving this college thing seems akin to, summiting Mount Everest. Oh, we got the sweatshirt and we got the one we wanted and here we are at the top. Okay, you summited, you're there. So that's where this language of base camp comes from. But in a really beneficial base camp, one that really supports children, okay, there are more resources devoted to managing the climb than to making sure you summit. Okay, so if you watch any movies about Mount Everest, it's really important to get to the summit. But the base camp leaders who are most successful and don't lose people or have fewer people injured are the ones who help people where they are with what's going on right now on the mountain. Okay? You provide resources that are relevant, again, to what's going on right now. If your kid is having a breakup relationship issue, what's relevant to them right now is for you to hold space and be with them and help them make some meaning about that and make sense of that and get through that and do the college stuff later. Okay? Because the college stuff to them is not really relevant right then. And you're looking at the deadlines. I remember this so well. Okay, you're looking at the deadlines going, oh, we don't have time for this. Okay, but in their minds, it's not relevant in that moment. Okay, and if you're with them in the moment with relevant, responsive, reliable help, they can then shift over and eventually focus on the college thing again. And it's collaborative and respectful. So stuff happens. You can't get rid of the stuff. Okay? And the amount of energy that it takes to try to get rid of the stuff, in my opinion, and it is an opinion, is better used for surfing and coping and figuring out how to manage that stuff when it happens. Okay, so the impact of stuff, and this relates to trauma, and we're not going to get into trauma, but it comes from the trauma literature, is that how we manage stuff and the meaning we make when stuff happens. Trauma is not about the stuff. Trauma is about the meaning we make about ourselves because that stuff happened. So the same event, for someone who comes away with it and says, oh, that bad thing happened to me, or oh, it's really disappointing that I didn't get into my top 5 colleges. It's really sad that happened to me. Okay, that kid's going to be better shape than the kid who says, oh, I'm a loser, I'm nothing, who makes meaning about themselves. So the impact depends on the meaning you make about it. And that's where you guys come in. To really help them come away with something like, oh, that was challenging. Or that bullying episode was really hard on you. That was a terrible thing that happened to you. Okay? Versus them coming away and thinking, I am bad, I'm a loser, I'm not a winner, whatever it might be. Okay, so this idea of self-led caretaking, I think I'm beating a dead horse at this point, but really important. And really provides resources that help kids cope with stuff. Not just get rid of it, not just bypass it, but cope with it. So this is what worry does. Okay, worry creates the warp effect. You get racked with worry, you get anxious and angsty, you get reactive, and you get pooped. Okay, I know, I remember going through this. I raised 3 boys, okay, when the oldest got to this point. I remember feeling like this a lot, okay, especially the pooped part. Okay, and so what happens is that warp effect shifts base camp. So this is what we want, and we can't be this all the time. I'm realistic, okay? No one's ever like this all the time, okay? But you want to have as much of this available as you can. But when you're worrying about this process, when you're so focused on the achievements and the outcomes, it shifts base camp. And so what kids are met with, instead of those C qualities, they're met with reactivity, the disappointment, the get to work, the taskmaster, okay? And those C qualities shift to more D qualities, dysregulated, okay, dismay, disapproval. And even your kids will say they know you're not doing this on purpose. Okay? When I've worked with kids, they know their parents aren't trying to do this, but they still feel the weight of it. Okay, so when caretaking help comes from reactive parts inside of you, okay, so if you have a part that's really scared, that really thinks it's so important for your child to be, go to the next level or be as successful as you were or more successful than the last generation, whatever it may be, okay, if there's a reactivity to that, then the stuff kids encounter becomes harder for them to manage, it's harder for them to cope, and the impact of it is worse on them. Okay, a little bit about the brain. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but got these two areas of the brain. Okay, this is your reactive emotional brain, vastly oversimplified here, always looking for threats. Then we've got this prefrontal cortex. This is where all those C qualities, where you get access to those, okay, responsive, regulated. There are pathways between. To learn, to be successful, to grow, to listen, you have to have access to this. Can't listen or be kind without access to this. If this gets activated, you're stuck in the lower part of the brain. So when you're noticing what's going on with your kid, and I'm using this example of Sam. So Sam is having a hard time focusing on what's going on. All the mail is coming in, it's just piling up in Sam's room. Sam is showing very little interest in it, and it's like, what's going on? So when the parent is noticing this, Sam seems to be struggling with this process. These pathways are open. They still got access to the C qualities, still got access to coping. But when the brain starts worrying about this stuff, the focus shifts away from Sam, goes to the worried thoughts. Oh, what if, okay? And, we've got to get rid of this stuff, got to make it happen, got to make sure. So you lose access to the kindness, the listening, all of this, and Sam's now got no help. Sam's all there by Sam's self. So what I'm suggesting is that you work on getting your shift together and wonder, I wonder what's going on. And I'm confident you all do this. Okay? I'm confident you all do this, but then sometimes the worry then gets the better. But try to wonder instead of worry. Be curious, not furious, so that you can be with your child now. And we're going to get into some really specific shifts in a minute, but all right if I take a second for an exercise here? Okay. So I'm writing a book with a colleague, and she does this exercise, which is really kind of cool. So if you all put your hands out like this, with the palms facing down, and just think about something about this college process that you're worried about. And you can say it out loud or in your head. I'm worried about. Now go inside and see what's it feeling like in there. Okay, just notice what's it feeling like in there. Okay, now flip your hands over. Okay. Take a breath. Now say, I wonder about. Any difference? Kind of cool, right? Okay, some people will not experience a big difference. Some people are like, oh my God, that's so different, okay? But having the palms up helps. It's more open to possibilities. But when you wonder, there's more optimism. There are more possibilities available. So when we look at providing this support for coping and the connectedness, okay, kids will strive, okay? they're surviving much better, their health is better, and they're definitely thriving. So if you're looking for a recipe, okay, that first one I showed you, that cultural recipe, I don't recommend that one. I recommend this one. Okay. So I'm going to skip over this one. So some helpful parenting tools for this process. This is more what you came here for than my introduction, but I think the introduction helps these to have a little more oomph. Okay, get your shift together so you don't worry so much, and I'm going to give you a quick way to do that in a minute. Try to stay as calm, curious, and connected as you can. Focus on coping. Okay, rather than achievement, focus on coping with what's going on. And if they can cope with what's going on, they're going to achieve. And teach them how to do the same. Okay, so here's a quick way to get your shift together. And by this I mean shifting away from the worry. First thing is to spot it, catch it, notice that you're worrying. Okay, and you know, the parts that worry, they're just trying to get your attention. They're trying to point out things that are of concern. Usually it's a valid concern. Okay, but concern is different than worry. Concern is like taking interest in something that needs attention. Worry is torturing yourself with disturbing thoughts. Okay, not so helpful. So catch yourself worrying, identify what the concern is, separate it out from the worry. And then notice, name, and normalize your feelings and thoughts. So if we go with Sam, I'm concerned that Sam is overwhelmed and struggling with this process. You know, it's reasonable that I'm feeling bad and anxious about that, right? Okay, it's reasonable if you're uncomfortable and having feelings about that. Next step, sniff it. Is this a life-threatening crisis? Is the fact that Sam hasn't looked at any college brochures a life-threatening crisis? No. No. Okay? And another way to ask this question is, will getting warped help here? Will that state of being warped help me? No, it won't. And then shift it. Turn off those alarms that worry was ringing. Try to go into that front part of the brain, tap into those C qualities, and then step toward your kid and focus on, okay, how are we going to cope with this issue? How are we going to cope with this concern? Okay, so here are some helpful shifts for the college process, and then I'm going to turn it over to Deena, who's going to talk to you about more nuts and bolts. So instead of thinking it's the big step that means everything, it's like summiting Mount Everest, spot it, sniff it. Okay? It's one step on an ongoing path. And I can say this with confidence. My boys are now in their 27 to 33. Okay? They're on to all kinds of different things. That was just a blip, you know. Did it help them? Yeah, of course it did. Okay? But it wasn't the most important thing in their life. Instead of worrying, you know, oh, Sam is, you know, everything depends on Sam doing this now. Instead of worry, spot it, sniff it, and shift it over to wonder. You know, maybe do the hand thing if that works for you. It doesn't work for everybody. Okay, instead of being furious, spot it, sniff it, be curious. Okay, be curious, not furious. Not always easy. And if you are furious, you probably have a very good reason for being furious. I'm not saying that, you know, that you have to be this perfect parent who never gets angry or gets upset about anything. That's not the point here. The point is that you manage that for yourself before you go step toward your kid, and you get curious with your kid instead of approaching them with the fury. Instead of thinking about it's my job to get them to the summit, think more that it's your job to help them manage the journey. Instead of, this is a real pet peeve of mine, I think you too, Deena, right? We are looking at schools You're not going. I'm sorry, but you're not going. As much as you'd want to do it all over again, no, you're not going. They're going. Okay? So instead of we, the royal we, my teen is interested in. My child is interested. Okay, instead of bombarding with questions, and that's the way you greet your child. Okay, even how was school? They just finished a whole day in school. They don't want to talk about it anymore. Okay, so instead of all the didges and the how was, greet your child in your version of the way your dog greets you. Even if you're not a dog person, okay, this is my dog Luna. And Luna is always that happy when she sees us, whether she's been in the crate for all day or we've been out in the hall for 5 minutes, okay? If you can shift to greet your child like that with something like, I'm happy to see you, or just hi instead of how was school, it can change things dramatically. Okay, instead of constant college talk, and I'm speeding through these because I want Deena to have enough time for hers. Okay, set a time each week for college talk. Okay? I have a story about that, but I'm not going to tell it right now. Okay, all right, you can tell it. Instead of thinking that what you're trying to do is secure a prize here, okay, the bumper sticker, the sweatshirt, okay, what you're doing is trying to find a good fit. Trying to find something that will, further them on the next step. Because this is all about what they can do next. This isn't an ending. This is just a beginning. And instead of evaluating, this is a good school, okay, Sam is a space shot, okay, describe. That school had these things going for it, instead of a good school or a bad school. And then finally, instead of trying to fix their future, just be with them now. It goes by so fast. And the time, if you can just be with them now, even if they're struggling, just be with them instead of trying to fix or make something happen. Just find some moments to just be with them. And keep breathing. Okay? Their possibilities are just beginning. And the fact that you're here, you guys are doing great, just take a big breath. All right. So, do you want the clicker?
Yeah, well, this thing, I'm going to just use this thing. And we don't need that anymore?
Where's yours?
Mine is... Okay. Okay, so I am always so glad when I'm doing this presentation that Susan is going first, because she brings so much reasonable perspective and thought to this process, because it is really stressful and it is really overwhelming. And I think probably a lot of you are here because this process feels that way to you. So I try to use both sides of my brain when I'm doing this work. And when I work with students, I say, my role with you is to try to help reduce the anxiety and stress around this process. And that's my social worker brain. And then my lawyer brain is trying to help you figure out when you may need to advocate for yourself in this process, whether that's with your parents or with the college or with your counselor at school. And so I just say that it's super stressful. I am an expert in this area, and I think I did every single one of those things that Susan said not to when my own daughter was going to college. So it is really normal, I think, to feel all these things, but it's really valuable to keep all of that stuff in mind. So the first thing that I want to talk about is a little bit of a shift. One of the things that I think does help to reduce some of the anxiety around this process is that there are over 3,000 colleges in the United States. You will hear over and over about the 12 on the East Coast and the few on the West Coast, but there are many. I try to visit about 20 colleges a year, and I'm constantly discovering colleges that are like amazing fits for particular kids. So you really want to keep an open mind. And I also say that to approach this process, instead of approaching it from a place of scarcity, like, where is my student going to get in? They need to do this and this and this and this to get into this school. To think, oh my gosh, there are 3,000 colleges out there, many, many, many of them accept most students who apply. And there are so many places for opportunity here to think about it in terms of that way. Not, oh, there's such a small number of schools that work, but really that there's a huge, broad number of schools out there. There's so many, and they can be great fits for many, many different reasons. And I really believe that. And my sort of trust in that comes from some great research that was done at Stanford University. There's an organization there called Challenge Success, and they're still doing research on it. It's an amazing website. You can go and you can see their white paper on college selectivity. And they've been studying this for years. And the conclusion is really that college selectivity is not a reliable predictor of student learning, of their job satisfaction, of their career success. Oh.
Keep talking and I'll see if I can.
Did it just disappear? Oh, geez.
Yes, start slide.
Let me see.
Here, why don't you keep talking? And
Okay, I'll have my assistant do this work here.
without my glasses.
Wait a second. From the
Is that
beginning.
From current slide.
Yeah, hit that. Okay, first thoughts. Okay, so I covered this. I'll show you here. 3,000 colleges. Many of them accept more than 70% of applicants. So not coming at it from a place of anxiety, a place of plenty, really, because there are so many great places that could work for your student. So Challenge Success is the organization I just mentioned from Stanford. And really, the research demonstrates in many ways that college selectivity is not a reliable predictor of student learning, job satisfaction, or well-being. And they show really that what is much more important than the selectivity level, and in fact, you'll hear this term, probably highly rejective schools, which is the schools that are rejecting applicants, many more applicants than other schools. So the schools that you're probably hearing about, the Ivy Leagues, are rejecting 90 out of 100 students or 85 out of 100 students' applications. And so there are many, many other schools out there that can work. So the point is, what is really the most important thing that matters in terms of student success? Again, it's really shifting your perspective here. And when students are looking at colleges, they should really be asking, where will I be engaged? How will I be engaged at the college? Will I be able to form strong relationships with professors or mentors? That doesn't mean that it has to be a small school. It just means that that student will be able to connect with somebody else there, a mentor or a professor, and really be able to have a strong relationship with that person. And that goes to some of the questions that I have students ask when they're visiting campuses. Will they be able to apply their learning through internships and long-term projects? So not only just classwork, but what are they doing during their summers? Are there programs in the schools that allow students to gain experiential learning? Because students learn by doing. So this is another really valuable part of colleges. And colleges across all levels of selectivity offer this. And where will they be able to find a sense of community? Where can they find their people? Because we know that students don't thrive unless they're engaged in a community where they feel supported. So this is another real piece. And I ask students, do you feel like you see your people? And I don't mean people who look like you exactly, but I mean, do you feel like you see people that you would want to have in your circle, that you would want to have in your life for the next 4 years? And sometimes students don't know the answer to that, but sometimes they get a feeling about, yeah, this really fit for me. I really felt like my people were there. So with these things in mind, I just want to grab my water. You know, I think you approach your college list really with these 3 pieces in mind. And then in order to help with the stress and anxiety of this process, I have some steps that I suggest to really break it down more. So what does a balanced college list look like? Well, along with considering that there are many, many colleges that can work and the predictors that I just talked about, what matters to the student? Here are some really basic things, right? Size, location, academic rigor, offerings, housing, culture, student life, and financial aid and need. Here they are. And then I ask students to think about, I talk with them about the work that's involved in the college application process. So although we may start out with a list of 20 colleges, there is a lot of work that your student is going to be doing. There are applications, there are essays. Since COVID and the Supreme Court decision 2 years ago on affirmative action, the colleges have added on many, many more essays than before. And so it's really helpful to apply to fewer colleges. There are students out there that are applying to 20 colleges. It's too much. It's too much work to ask your kid to be doing. It's too much work for them to be taking on. So you want to think about all of the work that they're going to have to be taking on during this process and really considering a reasonable list. And then there are college counseling platforms that can help. In Wilton, I think you guys have School Links. Are you guys familiar with that? But there are many. Naviance, Maya Learning, College Crystal. These are like Coke and Pepsi. These are companies that the schools pay for. And they each say that their offerings to show you where your son or daughter or your student's going to get into college is going to be better. They all show about the same, and you can find scattergrams that are predictive, but not a crystal ball, that show you where students with similar grades and similar scores have been accepted. So that can also sort of give you a sense of whether your list is heading in a reasonable direction. Okay, let me go here. Okay, so when I start working with students, I do usually start thinking about around 20 colleges. I never want them to apply to 20 colleges, but I want to make sure that I'm not missing colleges that might be a particularly good fit for a specific student based on an interest that they have. So because I visit colleges and I work in this field, I know about them. You can find tons of resources out there on colleges, and I'll give you a list of those as well. But the way I start is to really think through your values. You know, what is most important to you? Aside from those 3 things that I said at the beginning that we know really help students be successful after they graduate from college and to have good college experiences, what else is most important to you? And then really broaden your list, think broadly, keep an open mind. Again, I start with around 20 colleges. And when I have students research colleges, I always say sort of go way beyond the website, go way beyond what you're going to see on school links or the College Board, because those are also companies that are doing advertising for the colleges. So that doesn't mean you have to visit every college that maybe is on your list, but it does mean that you have to sort of dig deeper than just what they're showing you on their website. When I worked at Columbia, there was tons of pressure on us to make sure that, you know, we were had beautiful websites with like students, everybody had perfect skin and white teeth, and there was like a culturally beautiful group of students under a deciduous tree. I mean, this is really important. We spend millions of dollars on this. So you have to be a good consumer and go deeper. And you can do that by, there are many ways to do that. I have students research in depth, maybe a department that might interest them, ask really specific questions to students when they're on campus, ask questions to administrators when they're on campus. So you just want to really make sure that you're looking beyond the gloss. Okay. And some of the things to think through, really, are, you know, what's important? Is it important for you to go somewhere to graduate that, you know, you are saving money for graduate school, right? Is that an important part? Or do you want a super intellectual experience at college? Do you want to have it be sort of like a much more arty or quirky experience? What matters to you in terms of your surroundings? And you want to prioritize those criteria, really break them down. I have students usually break down 4 or 5 top criteria and then think about which schools on their list are going to be safety targets or reaches. Okay, so what is a safety target and reach? You're going to hear this a lot. There may be different words for them. Sometimes I call them safe bets, likelies, unlikelies. I'm sort of stuck on safety target or reach, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you won't hear other terms and that this one is better or anything. It's just the one that I'm stuck to using. So what does a safety look like? Well, a safety looks like a school where it fits your student for all of the reasons that you've figured out are criteria work for you, and a student's test scores, GPA, and class rank will fall above 75% of the average admitted students, right? So this is likely a school that has a very high admissions rate. What's a target? A target is a school where a student's test scores, GPA, are close to the majority of accepted students. So you can sort of see that they're in this circle of accepted students. And then what is a very low or, oh, I think I have this wrong. This was supposed to be safety here, and then medium, yes, safety's, okay, I've got it. Safety is targets and reaches. So a reach is a school that has, no matter what, if a reach has, are you guys seeing this? Oh, good. If it has an admit rate of less than 25%, that means it's a reach. That means 1 out of 4 students are accepted. And so it is definitely, you want to have reaches on your list if they fit for the other, the other criteria that are important to you. But you want to be really clear that, okay, this is a reach. This is a reach for every single student who's applying to this. For students who are applying to highly rejective schools right now, many of those are in the South right now because there's a huge trend towards the South. Duke, Vanderbilt, all of the Ivies. Those schools are accepting somewhere around between 4 to 5 students out of 100. And pretty much all of those students who are applying, they are these kids that may not be very healthy, but they're super, super high achieving. And so it is just not a reasonable expectation for them or for you to have that, yeah, sure, you're gonna get in there. You've got straight A's and you've got great scores. Everybody who's applying to those schools has, incredible achievements because everything has been so inflated and everybody feels like they need to have these achievements. And yet still only, 4 out of 100 are gonna get in because the school is looking at students from every high school across the country, right, and internationally. So it's really important that their self-esteem, that their expectations are not based on these schools and whether or not they get in. And in fact, when I work with students to create a list, we are, I say over and over again, every single school on your list, I don't care if it's a safety or a target or a reach, has to be someplace that you would want to go if you're accepted. If not, don't apply to it. Don't go through the intense effort that it takes to apply to college if you don't want to go to that school. Or if your parents aren't going to let you. So when I help students come up with the criteria that matters to them, this is just an example. It can get really overwhelming when you're looking at colleges and you can look at all of these different things and decide, well, I really like this school because it's in an urban area, and this school is really big and it's got like great Greek life and I really like that, but I really want small classes, and so I like this about this school, but I like this about this school, and these schools are really different. And you've got to figure out what the similar criteria are. What are the things that matter the most to you? That you may have a list of 20 things that matter to you, but eventually you're gonna need to narrow it down to the 4 or 5 things that matter to you most. And then I work on a chart with students, and we really research whether or not, hopefully we've already researched this, but how does this college meet that criteria? So you want a strong creative writing program. Oops, can you see this? Okay, good. What does that mean for you? What is it like at Bard? What is it like at Kenyon? What is it like at NYU? Oh, SUNY Albany doesn't have this. Okay, well, let's just note that and go on. And then the same with all of the other criteria we're looking at and making sure that the colleges meet the criteria in the way that's important. And then you add them up. It's kind of a simple way to do this, right? So these schools here, Bard, yeah, maybe I'd be happy there. Kenyon sounds good. NYU and SUNY Albany, they only meet 2 of these important criteria for me. It looks like the school that might be the best fit for me maybe is College of Worcester. Now that doesn't mean that has to be your reach school or that you have to apply early decision there, but this is a way to sort of think about your college criteria. Okay, so I mentioned that, I visit colleges, I'm thinking about this all the time, I'm reading about it all the time, I'm really boring, I think, sometimes. And but there is so much information out there, it can be overwhelming. These are a few resources that I think are really good. I usually bring them, but I didn't bring them this time because they're these big, heavy books. The Fisk Guide to the Colleges is like, do you guys remember Ruth Reichel from the New York Times? Yeah. So she used to go into the restaurants in costume, and she would do her reviews without them knowing that she was Ruth Reichel from the New York Times. And that's the Fisk Guide to the Colleges. It is one of the only objective resources out there that gives you a really great summary of the colleges that many of your students will be applying to. And it starts with a summary of the college's history, the academics, any requirements, where the student body is from, social life, Greek life, and then again, a little summary. Then it has an overlaps page. So if you like Kenyon College, you might want to look at College of Worcester and Oberlin, and maybe you want to look at Bates. So it's really valuable, and it's not an advertisement. Steve Antonoff, College Match, he's kind of a legend, and he has like a super nerdy way to take a quiz, to think about what the things are that are most important to you. It's fun. And so I really like that. Colleges that change lives, that's a very old resource. They have a great website. These are colleges that were called like the hidden gems. Now they're not so hidden anymore because college admissions has gotten so competitive. But I love when I visit these colleges that change lives because they're colleges that are surprising, that you may not have heard about, but where students are really, really happy. They have a very high retention rate and a high graduation, 4-year graduation rate. And then if your son or daughter is interested in, or your student is interested in art or writing, creative colleges is great. It also gives you some information about how to create portfolios, for them to create portfolios if they're applying to a BFA program. Cool colleges is like super funky colleges for kids who want to be outdoors. Prescott, College of Atlantic, where students live in like a yurt that they built and can bring their pets and make all their own food, and very cool stuff like that. And then I'll talk more about this, but the K&W Guide to Colleges for Students with Learning Differences. So this is obviously something else that comes up a lot. You want to make sure that not only are the college criteria things that your son or daughter want in a college, but might need in a college, right? What kind of learning supports from the colleges? I'll just say this very, very briefly, but under today we lost the Department of Education, so nobody's really sure how this is going to impact students with disabilities, but under the IDEA, which is the legislation that serves students with learning disabilities, you are entitled through high school to learn in a way that works for you. Once you get to college, that changes, and you're now seen under a different part of the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. And what the schools need to do, what colleges need to do, is to make a reasonable accommodation under the law. So it's a much lower bar for them to meet. But because there are so many students with learning issues, many colleges have now gone like far beyond and have amazing resources. And so you also want to think about, okay, for students that have learning disabilities and for students who have mental health issues, I'm going to skip over this for a second. Oops, how do I get to the next slide? So I'm going to just talk about this for a second. So learning disabilities, how to look for colleges where students have learning disabilities. You really want to make sure that you're asking questions, very specific questions to the school. How often can my child meet with support? Are the learning disability offices, are they supported by professionals? Do they have master's degrees or PhD? Or are there students who are doing the tutoring, or are they professionals who are doing tutoring? Is there a liaison that works between the Office of Disability and the faculty in case my student's professor decides not to recognize a particular accommodation that they receive at school? So there are all different kinds of levels of learning support at colleges. And so I say that because there are so many students right now that need learning support. And the same thing goes for mental health, right? All of us see a lot more anxiety, all of us who work with teenagers, a lot more anxiety, a lot more depression. And so the colleges, many of them are really trying hard to support their students on campus. And again, there are really great questions to ask about that. And then the other thing is, okay, if your student isn't ready, this is just as Susan said, like one little step, right? This doesn't have to be, you go through high school 4 years, you get all A's, you do well on your tests, you go to college for 4 years, then you get your MBA and you go to Goldman Sachs, right? Like that is not the only way to do this. And I have to say this a lot to my banker dad clients, okay? It is not. You can get off the beaten path. you can do other things. You can take years off. You can travel. You can do things during your summer that are interesting to you. You can go through college in a longer time. There are many, many ways. This is just one small step. It just seems enormous. It's important, but it's not enormous. Okay, so finding out whether or not your son or daughter, your student, is really ready for college. So here are some examples of colleges for students with learning disabilities, and this is a big range of them, but I just wanted you to see some of them that are around here, and some of them that you might not know have great learning support, including UConn. And then here are some great colleges that have resources for students with mental health issues. Whoops, this one didn't fully download. There it is. I just visited Denison, and they have a whole wellness center on their campus where they really integrate emotional health and physical health for their students. McAllister, actually, every student is entitled to, I think, 3 therapy sessions during their first semester. You could get a lot more, but they actually, it's like, this is what you're doing, right? So students really take advantage of it. Okay, so I just want to go back after I say all that in terms of creating a college list. I just want to say that when you are thinking about how to research the colleges, again, to look, those resources that I gave you, those books and websites, those are really great ones. And then you can visit colleges. You don't have to visit all of the colleges, and I really never suggest that parents do that. There are some people who fly around and visit 15 schools. I think visiting 3 or 4 is fine. You want to visit colleges that are different so that if there are questions about, well, I don't really know if I want big or small or rural or suburban or urban, or does it matter to me if the campus is diverse or if there are a lot of LGBTQ kids, so that you really get a sense of what it is that matters, and to keep a record of that, right? To be careful about generalizations from others on your tour and generalizations from parents, but to write down what you see and think, because sometimes when you do these many trips at one time, everything can get kind of blurred together. Reach out to current students and alumni. So you may know this through your kids' high school. You may know other friends who have students who are there. I have really specific questions that I suggest students ask to students, and I try to connect students to students that are similar to them in profile and are different in profile, so that they can ask a range of questions to get a sense of what that college experience is like. And then also, if academics are really important, then I have students do a deep dive into the website for the academic areas. And you can generally tell the depth of a academic department by the number of professors who are there, the number of classes there. Look at the terminal degrees. Look, if you're interested in international relations, you want to look for international professors that come and visit. If you're interested in art, you want to look for museum curators that might be on campus, that might be teaching classes. So you want to look very deeply, and I try to help students do that. Okay. Oh, and then this one I said, you know, if employment statistics and graduate school statistics are important to you, then ask those questions. You can find out from career services, where are students working? You're always going to hear this line, 80% of our students or 90% of our students are employed or in graduate school 6 months after graduation. Where are they employed? Are they working at the Gap? That might be fine. But you want to know the details, right? Because you're going to get a lot of very general information unless you dig deeper. Okay, so I already went through this. And I do have documents, if anybody wants them, for questions to ask for students with learning disabilities and questions to ask about mental health. So this is my last slide. And I just say, think back to the beginning and before you gave birth or you adopted your child, and how many people were there to support you and give you advice and celebrate this process. And just really keep in mind that there are lots of resources, ways to reach out. It can be actually even overwhelming, but that everybody is sort of going through it. This is only one, right, of the many decisions your kid will be making with your support. So just try to keep that in perspective. And that, be okay with ambiguity. There's a lot of questions about, like, what is your passion? What do you want to do? What do you want to do when you get, I mean, I do this. I went to law school and got my master's in social work. I mean, this was not what I expected. Worked out great. But, right, like, to expect that they're going to know at 16, 17 what they're going to be doing, like, next week is a lot, right? Let alone 5 years down the line. So the colleges are set up like that pretty much. You can choose your major during your sophomore year. So be okay with ambiguity. They might not know that. And, this is the other thing. I think Susan said it too, but, listen and be curious about where your teenager may be happiest, right? Be curious about what ticks for them. Be curious, because I learned so much when I was going through this process with my daughter, and it drove me absolutely batty. And one of the things was like, oh yeah, I'm an expert at this, and she wanted to hear nothing that I had to say. But I did learn to let somebody else ask her the questions. She wouldn't listen to me, but it was about asking the questions to her. That was what really engaged her in this process, was finding about her, not the assumptions that I had about the colleges where she should apply or who she was at that time. So that's it. I have a lot of resources if anybody wants to reach out to me. I'm happy to send free information. And yeah, good luck.
Thank you both. That was great. And I know it's a lot to process. And we have a few minutes for questions for questions. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask?
So the question was about where to find information about employment. You got to really dig deep. I would go to career services at the school, and you will get, the line that I'm talking about. 80% of our students, 90% of our students are employed 6 months after graduation or in graduate school. Okay, where? You want to ask, right? The person, the director of career services, whoever's working there, where are your students working? Do you have a list of where they're working? What are the organizations they're working for? Are they working for nonprofits? Are they working for companies? Are they working for companies that are in the location where the college is? Or are students not finding jobs in the local area? Are they going back to other parts of the country? What are the salary ranges? They'll know that. And in terms of graduate school, what graduate school programs are students getting into? Where are they applying? There's some colleges. I just visited a college in Pennsylvania. That's one of those colleges that changed lives. It's called Ursinus, and it's in the middle of Pennsylvania. It's pretty remote, but 80% of the students that graduate from there that want to go to med school get into med school. And so there are these are the types of questions to really, you want to not just take at face value the answers you're getting. When you're advocating for your kid and you've got to push a little bit, I mean, if you want to know the answers to these things, you've got to push a little bit, because we do a really, really great job in admissions training the people who lead your tours and do your info sessions to give you very, very standard lines, right? You're going to hear, the only thing I don't really like about this campus is that the parking is really hard. Okay, there's other things that are problematic on that campus.
How do you figure out or find alumni for them to get in touch with? Is that just going to your career counselors at your high school? I mean, yeah, you can probably through friends, but if you don't have somebody who went to that college, how can you find somebody
Yeah,
to get that real read?
There are a couple of organizations now that if you email me, I'll send you the names of them where you can find current students and students that have graduated, so alumni, but they're recent students who are willing to talk to students at the school. But yes, you might. Now, I don't know if this has changed in Wilton. You used to be able to say oh, who is at this college that I'm thinking about attending and find out who that student was. There may be privacy protections against that now, I'm not sure. A lot of it does happen through talking to other people, finding out where other kids went, and then making those connections. But it's really important to have good questions to ask, when you're doing that.
Don't the tour guide offices often have resources of tour guides who are willing to talk?
Yes.
And, yeah.
I would say go beyond that, though, just because they're so well prepped.
Yeah.
But yes. Oh, it really depends on what your kid, who your kid is, right? Depends.
So you have a
Ask
question.
them what they think is the most important question. Mm-hmm. Get curious with them. And it may not be a good idea, but start there. I would start there.
I think you were going to tell a story about the weekly meeting format and what works or doesn't work with that.
Yeah. Well, you want to tell yours?
Our stories are very similar.
Yeah.
Okay? So you tell yours first.
I was super annoying to my daughter about that, despite knowing that I shouldn't be. She said to me, I'm only going to talk to you about this on Sundays.
Very same thing our son said to us.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
So I was okay with that, It was really hard for me to hold my tongue, but that made me feel a lot better. But it came from her, but I think it would have been really easy. It would have been nice if it had come from me because I was the grown-up.
Yeah. Another question in the back?
Can you tell us a little bit about the difference between early decision, early action, regular admission, and this new thing I hear about February admission, and also how that impacts the possibility of getting financial aid?
Oh, yes, I can tell you about that. So this year, this is interesting that you're asking about February admission. So we're seeing it a lot more in the past 5 years. I'll start at the beginning. I'll try to do it quick. So early decision is a binding agreement. It's not a binding legal agreement, but you're signing a statement as a student saying, if I'm accepted by this college, I will withdraw all of my other applications that I've submitted, and I will put down a deposit, and I will attend, okay? The benefits to that are that the admissions rates for early decision are much, much higher. At some schools, Wake Forest, for example, takes almost 80% of its class through early decision. And the reason why that is because the colleges are all very concerned about the number of students who say no to their offers. When I was at Columbia, that was my biggest concern. If I make an offer to this exemplary, incredible student, are they going to say no to me? And they all have to release that information. It's called their yield rate. And so when you accept a huge amount of students through early decision, you are assured that every single one of those students is going to come because they've signed an agreement saying that. So the admissions rates are much higher. Early action is you're applying at an early date, and you're applying by November 15th, and you're finding out usually by December 15th in terms of whether or not you've been accepted. Early action, the deadline is the same for the application. You find out the same time, maybe December 15th. Some schools, they will let you know for early action actually after January, which means you won't find out before you might have to apply early decision to a regular decision somewhere. So it's a little sneaky. But you as a student, if you are accepted early action, you have up until May to decide whether or not you want to attend. Regular decision, those applications are due January 1st, January 5th, maybe January 15th, and you find out really like right about now by April 15th, but a lot of students are hearing right now. February admission, usually you're not in any way indicating that is, you're checking the box for that. What's happening is that the colleges are creating programs where, and colleges run like businesses, right? They are creating programs where they can make a lot of money, and so often what they will do is accept students that they will not be able to house on campus because they don't have the room. But you will pay full tuition for that student, but they will say, you're gonna send that student to a semester in Spain, and then they'll start with us in February. And the colleges might pay $7,000 to that program, but you're going to pay $40,000 to the college to send your kid to that program. Or the college simply just does not have enough room for students starting in September, and so they will only offer admission in February, knowing that there's a lot of students who will leave the college during second semester, their juniors, to go abroad. So it's really space and money issues. In terms of financial aid, early decision really limits your financial aid, right? Because there's no negotiation after that year. You've signed a binding agreement. The reason why early action was created was because people thought, well, this is really wrong. My kid, the kids who are applying early decision, they don't have any negotiating room, so they're coming from wealthier families, and those families are full pay. And so you're telling me that most of the kids who are accepted early decision are coming from full pay families. The colleges, oh my gosh, I could go on about this forever. The colleges they use need in making decisions. There's very few colleges that are still need blind. They're all need aware. So basically, you don't have any negotiating room with early decision where you do with the other decisions, where you can go back to one college and say, College A, you gave us $20,000 in merit aid, but my kid's first choice is College B. And they will go back into committee and either decide to give you something or nothing, but often it's something. Did that answer your question? Okay, good.
I think we have time for one more.
Oh, sorry. That's a good question. I don't know. You've got to look up each school and find out whether they are need blind. I think so. I think they must be. But like for this year, for the first year, UConn introduced early decision, right? Didn't used to have that. Many public colleges do not have early decision. They only have early action. I'm sorry I was going on so long with that decision, early decision question, but I'm happy to answer questions if people have afterwards.
Thank you all for being here,
except for
and
it's 8.
thank you so much, and thank the library. Everybody have a great night.